Colonialism in Africa officially ended decades ago. Countries celebrated their independence. New flags were raised, and national anthems were sung with pride. But if you ask many Africans today, they'll tell you something feels unfinished. A difficult question hangs in the air. If colonialism is over, why does it still feel so present? Why do its shadows linger over our politics, our economies, and even our mindsets? The truth is, colonialism wasn't just about taking land or ruling from afar. It was a deep, systemic overhaul that reshaped entire societies, drew lines on maps, and designed economies for one purpose: extraction. And those designs, those structures are still impacting millions of lives across the continent today. This isn't about making excuses for the present. It's about understanding the past to build a better future. To really get it, you have to understand that colonialism wasn't just about foreign control. It was a business model. Colonial powers weren't building nations, they were building supply chains. Think about it. The railways they built, they didn't connect communities or trade hubs within Africa. They ran from the resource-rich interior straight to the ports, designed to ship raw materials out as fast as possible. The roads they paved, they served the mines and plantations, not the people. The administrative systems they set up, their main job was to collect taxes and enforce colonial rule, ensuring the smooth flow of resources back to Europe. What they didn't build is just as important. They didn't build systems to develop local industries. Why would they? That would create competition. They didn't create widespread education systems to empower the majority. An educated population might start asking tough questions, and they certainly didn't create self-sustaining, diversified economies. A dependent economy is a controllable economy. So, when independence came, African nations didn't inherit a blank slate. They inherited a machine designed to serve someone else. It's like being handed the keys to a car that's permanently wired to only drive in one direction away from home, and without the tools or resources to completely re-engineer it. Many countries were left trying to steer a system that was never built for them in the first place. Now, let's talk about the map of Africa. It looks so neat, with all those straight lines. But those lines tell a violent story. Africa's borders weren't drawn by Africans based on culture, language, or history. They were drawn in conference rooms in Europe, most famously in Berlin. European diplomats, with little knowledge of the people they were dividing, carved up the continent like a cake. As a result, powerful ancient kingdoms were split in two. Communities that had lived together for centuries suddenly found themselves in different countries. Even worse, rival ethnic groups with long histories of conflict were forced together into a single state and told, "You're a nation now, get along." This wasn't just a simple mapping error. It was a recipe for disaster. It created deep-seated political instability right from the start. How can you build a strong national identity when half your people feel more connected to their relatives across the border? How can you have peace when groups who were historic rivals are now competing for power within the same government? Many of the conflicts that have been reported as ancient tribal hatred are not ancient at all. They are modern political problems directly rooted in these artificial colonial-era borders. The lines drawn on a map a century ago are still fueling conflict and weakening national unity today. This inherited structure also locked many African nations into a cycle of economic dependence that didn't end with independence. The colonial economic model was simple. Africa produces the raw stuff. Europe makes the finished goods. After independence, what changed? For many, not much. The economic DNA was already set. Most African economies remained heavily dependent on exporting just one or two raw commodities, like cocoa, oil, or copper. This makes them incredibly vulnerable. When global prices for that one commodity crash, the entire national budget can collapse. And here's the most frustrating part of this legacy. It creates a situation where countries export what they have, only to import it back in a more expensive form. Ghana and Ivory Coast are the world's largest producers of cocoa, but they import billions of dollars worth of chocolate. Nigeria is a massive oil exporter, but it suffers from fuel shortages and has to import refined gasoline. The Democratic Republic of Congo has the minerals needed for smartphones, but it has to import the finished electronics. The economic structure stayed the same. In many cases, only the managers at the top changed. Breaking this cycle requires a massive, deliberate effort to build local industries and manufacturing, a challenge that many nations are still grappling with. But the impact of colonialism wasn't just economic or political, it was also psychological. It shaped how people were taught, what they valued, and how they saw themselves and the world. Colonial education systems weren't designed to celebrate African identity. In fact, they often did the opposite. European history, languages, and cultures were presented as the standard, the ideal. African history was often ignored or dismissed. Local languages were seen as inferior to English, French, or Portuguese. Traditional knowledge systems, which had sustained communities for generations, were devalued and labeled as primitive. This created a powerful, lasting mindset where success was often linked to how well you could imitate the colonizer. It fostered a belief that foreign models were always superior and local solutions were somehow second-rate. This isn't just about history books. It's about confidence. It's the subtle yet pervasive idea that innovation and expertise always have to be imported. When a society is taught for generations that its own culture is not good enough, it leaves a deep scar. Reclaiming that cultural confidence and valuing homegrown solutions is one of the most important, and perhaps most difficult, parts of the decolonization process that is still happening today. Now, it's crucial to be clear here. Is colonialism the only reason for the challenges Africa faces today? Absolutely not. To say that would be to deny Africans their own agency and responsibility. Post-independence, leadership choices matter enormously. The decisions made by African leaders over the last 60 years have had a huge impact, for better and for worse. Corruption is a massive problem that drains resources and destroys public trust. Weak institutions, political infighting, and poor governance have held back progress in many places. History provides context, but it does not determine destiny. You can't move forward by only blaming the past, but you also can't understand the present if you ignore how deeply the past shaped it. It's not an either-or situation. Both things are true at the same time. The colonial legacy created the initial conditions, the difficult starting point. The choices made since then have determined the path taken from that point. So, where does that leave us? Understanding colonialism's lasting impact isn't about playing the victim or making excuses. It's about having clarity. It's about diagnosis. You simply cannot fix a problem if you don't understand its root causes. You can't repair a machine if you don't know how it was built in the first place. Africa's future is incredibly bright, full of potential, innovation, and resilience. But unlocking that future depends on consciously and deliberately dismantling the inherited structures that hold it back. It means building new institutions that are designed to serve the African people, not to extract from them. It means fostering economic systems that create value at home, and it means reclaiming the confidence to believe in African ideas and African solutions for African problems. Colonialism wrote a painful and powerful chapter in Africa's story, but it is just one chapter. The people of the continent are the ones who will write the next. If you believe that Africa's story deserves to be told with this kind of depth and honesty, subscribe to our channel, The Great Africa Reality, because understanding the past is the very first step toward building a truly independent and prosperous future. Thanks for watching.